Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajoguna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidhenam Ihaverinam. Hare Krishna. So today we will try to discuss Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, which is entitled Karma Yoga. And we will discuss it in brief with the help of an acronym called TREE, T-R-E-E. So in this chapter, Lord Krishna is telling a lot about Karma Yoga. That's the title of the chapter. So the first T stands for Tyaga. Tyaga in Sanskrit, the word Tyaga means renunciation. So often people have this question that if I take to the process of bhakti or if I start reading Bhagavad Gita, I will become renounced. And that's what the question of Arjuna was. That Arjuna was also confused that is retiring from work a good way, or is acting in complete action a good way? So Krishna clarified that real renunciation does not mean that we stop doing actions. Rather, the real renunciation is in the mind. That means detachment from matter, but continue to act on our swadharma. We must continue to perform our prescribed duties and keep the Sanatan Dharma, that is Krishna consciousness or devotional service, in the center. And Prabhupada also mentions that it is better to act one's own duty, better to do one's own duty even incorrectly rather than trying to perform someone else's duty. So Bhagavad Gita does not say that we have to give up our family or wife or children or husband or parents, etc., or go to a forest. That's not the message of Bhagavad Gita, which sometimes people misunderstand. And that's what Krishna is trying to clarify here. Bhagavad Gita means that the renunciation is the spirit, not in the real work. One must continue to act on one's, whether one is in a job or business, in a dutiful way, understanding that it is a service to the Lord, and using the outcome of that in the spirit of devotion. And that's basically called akarma. Akarma means those actions which will not lead to any karmic bondage or any fruitive action and reaction cycle. Like we discussed the example of a soldier, when he kills the enemy in a war, that person is not punished by the laws of the government. Rather, if a civilian kills another person on the street, that person will be put behind the bars. Why? Because the soldier is acting under the guidance of Guru and the scriptures, the law books and the teachers, the commander. So that's what Krishna is telling to Arjuna, that don't give up, don't try to artificially renounce. It's not suited, it's not prescribed. Rather, you must continue to work in spirit of devotion. That's the real message of Bhagavad Gita. Don't become a pretender. Don't become a so-called renunciate. So do your duties nicely, keeping Krishna as the center, keeping the spirit of service and God consciousness, Krishna consciousness as the focus. Then that's real renunciation. Then the R. So the first 9 verses talk about the renunciation aspect, the Tyaga, T. The R stands for the rungs of the yoga ladder. Now one may say, I cannot completely be detached from everything. That's fine. Bhagavad Gita encourages one to gradually make progress. Like one cannot climb the 5th rung of the yoga ladder from the 0 level. One has to gradually make spiritual progress. Like this is called the journey of life. If we try to artificially jump to the 5th level of the ladder, we will fall down, we will get hurt. So if we artificially try to imitate someone who may be at the 5th or the 6th level, we may fall down. So what Bhagavad Gita is telling, the base level is completely lack of spiritual life, completely absorbed in sense gratification, no understanding of bhakti, no understanding of God consciousness. That's completely ignorant lifestyle. Then one comes to the next level, which is called the karma khanda, or the fruitive actions. Do this to get this, the action. And even for food, we are dependent on grains. Grains come because rains happen. Rains are controlled by the demigods. demigods are ultimately dependent on the Supreme Lord. So this section also talks about the interdependence, that how we have to gradually make spiritual progress by understanding that I am not the real doer. I'm dependent on the Lord and the other Lord's representatives. So if I try to enjoy things by my own selfish endeavors and not offer the fruits of my actions, that is called being a thief, or I'm stealing God's property and just enjoying it selfishly. So that's not a good idea. Then comes the Sakama Karma Yoga. So Sakama Karma Yoga means that action in which there is some part is given to the Lord or for good cause in Krishna conscious way, but the majority belongs to me. So there is still a lot of attachment. Then the next level is Nishkam Karma Yoga. That means detached work. And then that finally leads to Bhakti Yoga, or 100% attachment to the Lord, and continue to do one's duty with complete attachment to the Lord and offering everything at the lotus feet of the Lord. Now one may say that's difficult, but that's why this ladder analogy is given, that even if one wants to get there, but one has to gradually make spiritual progress. One does not need to artificially do it. It is a gradual progress. No matter what one's background may be, everyone can, if one is sincere and serious about this, one can gradually try to make spiritual progress in the yoga ladder. And that's what is discussed in text number 10 to 16 onwards. Now the next question may come. Well, if person is totally self-realized, that means he has climbed his or her way at the top level of Nishkam Karma Yoga. That means complete attachment to the Lord. Does that person need to perform actions? The answer is in the next point. 17 to 35 talk about being exemplary. So Arjuna was a pure devotee. Arjuna was a great devotee and a friend of the Lord. But Krishna is teaching Arjuna that you have to be a good example. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. A good teacher teaches by example. The world needs good example. There have been great kings like Lord Ram, Lord Janak Maharaj. Even Krishna himself says that yes, I am not involved in all this action reaction, but I still act in a dutiful way. Why? Because common people, in text number 31, it says that common people, follow the great souls. Yadyat acharati shreshtas. So if the leaders are doing something, then the common people will naturally imitate that. So as a leader, Arjuna was a great leader, being a great military man. So don't try to artificially give up. Rather be a good example and follow. Even you're in the state of Nishkam Karma Yoga, but continue to do your dutiful work because you have to show a good role model to the others. And this is a great lesson for parents, for teachers, for everyone, because we preach by our actions, not by our words. Actions speak louder than words. That's what the message in these 17 to 35 verses. And one should not do things abruptly. Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. And the last set of verses from 36 to 43 talk about the eternal enemy. So Arjuna asks, even after knowing, even after understanding what is the right course of action, Arjuna asks in text number 36, why is someone pushed to do wrong things or sinful activities? And then Krishna says this famous verse, Mahashano Mahapapma, that's the big demon, and that is Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, the lust. That is the biggest enemy. Lust is a big obstacle on the path of spiritual progress. Lust binds us in this material world. And what are the sitting places of lust? The senses and the mind. And Krishna also explains that how the material matter, and then comes the senses. Above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the spirit soul. So we can understand this with the example of a chariot. The senses are like the chariot, and the horses in the chariot. The reins which connect the senses to the charioteer are the mind. The intelligence controls the mind, or the senses through the medium of the mind. And the chariot driver is the intelligence, and the chariot, the passenger is the soul. So if the intelligence is strong, the senses will be controlled, the mind will be controlled. And how will the intelligence be strong? By the medium of Krishna consciousness, by understanding Bhagavad Gita, by following Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna is mentioning the dangers of lust, that how it destroys, it's one of the biggest enemy, how it destroys, how it impedes our spiritual progress. So, O Arjuna, you must conquer this lust. You must overcome this lust through the process of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, and it can be curbed in the beginning only. And we discussed in 2.62 in the last audio, in the last video, when we're talking about chapter 2, that all starts with contemplation on sense objects. Once we get deeper into this vicious trap, into this trap, then it becomes harder. As soon as the thought comes of something which is inappropriate for us, which is lusty, which is bad, then we have to curb right there. It is easier to curb that in the beginning rather than contemplating upon that. Then the mind may be bewildered, intelligence will be lost, and we may end up doing inappropriate things. So through the medium of higher taste of bhakti, we can curb the lower taste of lust. So to conclude chapter 3 with the acronym TREE, T-R-E-E. The first T is the Tyaga, which refers to renunciation. It's not the renunciation of activities. It doesn't mean giving up family, home, etc. It means to add the element of Krishna consciousness in our life and to be detached from the things which are bad for us, which are not conducive for our growth. R stands for the rungs of the yoga ladder. We gradually make our way to Nishkama Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga by starting to do something for the pleasure of the Lord. And then slowly we will advance if we are sincere and serious. Then E is being a good example, to behave in an exemplary way through our actions, through our behavior. Teaching is by example, not just by words. And then the last E stands for the enemy is the lust. So we must carefully guard against this enemy, which is situated in the senses and the mind. And how can we do that? By being Krishna conscious. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.